It's time for the Daily Planet podcast show. So sit back, relax, and give us a go. Scott and Matt and maybe a guest, undertaking an epic pod quest. We're gonna ramble on about movies and books and television and directors and film festivals and this really long list of stuff that I know nothing about, but they gave it to me and they really wanted me to read through it. And that's all I can really say about it, but it's gonna be great. Okay, start the show.
Hello, and welcome to the Daily Planet podcast, your weekly podcast for all things movies, TV, books, and whatever else we feel like talking about. My name is Scott Daly, and I am your host, and I'm joined this week by my co-host, Greenie Michael. Michael, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Scott. So let's gonna run into the maze.
You're gonna
run in there.
The Grievers and the Grievers. Stupid name. It's a stupid name. Anyway, we are here to talk about the latest movie in the last, I think, the last movie in the Maze Runner trilogy called The Death Cure. This is a series that I think both Michael and I have been following from the start. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about why we've been following this from the start in a bit. But I'm excited to talk about the movie with you, Michael. This is the first movie review episode of 2018.
Is it? Oh, what an honor. What an honor.
All right, but first, Michael, we gotta talk some news.
This is Daily Planet News. I didn't like that.
What happened in the world this week there, Scott?
Well, Michael, the Oscar nominations came out on Tuesday, and that's pretty big in the world of film.
Mm-hmm. And
those
happen once a year.
They do. And I know you don't care about them very much, but I like them.
That's not true. Well, so for not last year, but for like the 4 or 5 years before that, I made an effort to like watch every Oscar movie every year.
Oh, wow. Okay. Sorry, I take it back.
Yeah. So, take that. But I stopped doing it because it got kind of formulaic. Like there were movies that like there's always the biopic movies where they're like chasing the best actor award. Like the Winston Churchill movie this year and like the Stephen Hawking movie and like all of those movies. And I hate them all. And I kind of lost faith in the Oscars because I feel like movies are nominated for all of the wrong reasons, and they look over movies that were actually really well done but don't seem like they're Oscar movies, much like Lego Batman, you're spoiling my news, Michael. Which was I'm just gonna say Lego Batman was the best movie last year. And the fact that it didn't get an Oscar nomination is a travesty. And I'm going to boycott the Oscars.
Okay. You're adding, every week you add to your list of boycotts.
I'm a man of principles.
You boycotted comic book movies and then put 2 of them on your top 5 list.
Well, Lego Batman doesn't count because
it does, though.
It's I'm not sure exactly why it doesn't count, but it doesn't count.
Because it does.
Because it's not the same type of superhero movie.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think you are absolutely correct. I think a lot of times there are Oscar movies and there are non-Oscar movies, but I will say that this year feels different to me a little bit.
Okay.
And we're going to explain why a little bit.
Okay, why does it feel different?
Well, the movie leading the Oscar nominations this year, 13 nominations, is The Shape of Water.
Yes.
Guillermo del Toro's genre love story about a mute woman falling in love with a fish monster. And that's not... I would not say that movie and think, yeah, Oscar bait. Like, that's a very different kind of film. And while it was really pretty universally praised and did very well, I expected it to be nominated for Best Picture. I was not expecting it to be the favorite for Best Picture, which we talked about on the podcast last week that it is, and also to make the most number of nominations, so it's pretty exciting in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm glad too. I never got to see that movie, sadly. but it does. It's the kind of movie that should be nominated for Oscars instead of you know The Revenant.
Yes, I agree with that one. Another thing this year, Get Out. The film Get Out makes history. Jordan Peele becomes the first African American ever nominated for both producing, directing, and writing of the same movie, which is Get Out. So that's great for him. I know you didn't like that movie as much as I did, but it's pretty exciting for him. I think it is also a genre movie that is very different from what you would call the normal Oscar fare.
Right.
And his star, Daniel Kaluuya, was also nominated for Best Actor. So good for him, too.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Also, Greta Gerwig became the 5th woman ever nominated in the Best Director category, which is a big deal. I loved that movie, and I thought she did a really good job directing it, and I thought she was snubbed out of the Golden Globes, so I'm happy to see her on this list.
Yeah, never get to see that one either, but
yeah,
still catch it at some point.
Yeah, of course. And Best Director is a pretty solid category this year, too. And Jordan Peele's in it, along with Greta Gerwig, Paul Thomas Anderson, Guillermo del Toro, and Chris Nolan, all in the Best Director category this year. So I think that's a pretty good list. I would probably be happy with any of these people winning the Oscar. And that's rare that I would say that.
Yeah, that's a good point. All of these movies were actually well directed.
Yeah.
And not just like pretentious.
Yeah. Netflix's Mudbound. This is, I don't know if you ever saw that movie because Netflix kind of just dropped it and buried it.
and then never mentioned it.
Yeah. That got 3 nominations, though. Supporting Actress, Mary J. Blige, Original Song, and Cinematography. Rachel Morrison is nominated for Cinematography, making her the first woman ever nominated in the Cinematography category. So great news again.
So one thing I will mention about Netflix is they listened to our criticism
they
last
did?
year. Because I remember talking on the podcast with you at some point about how they just like release these movies and then and we actually asked them to advertise them to us. And now when you open Netflix, there's like a little trailer playing for Netflix things.
Although I don't like when things autoplay.
I don't either. So I regret what we said. I regret.
What have we done?
I regret it all. But clearly, we were probably the only people to have mentioned that. And I think we have a whole lot of power in this industry.
Obviously. So Netflix, stop the autoplay.
Please stop the autoplay. It really cheapens the website.
It really does. I can't stand it. I really can't. Another thing, James Franco was not nominated for lead actor for The Disaster Artist. He was kind of heavily favorited to be nominated in this category, especially after he won the Golden Globe. And many see this as an intentional snub from the Academy due to the allegations that came out about him after that win. You can have a debate whether or not he deserved the nomination or not, but a lot of people are saying that is what's happening here, that the Academy is not going to tolerate these kind of allegations and therefore did not nominate him.
Yeah.
Which is kind of ironic because like last year Casey Affleck won and he's got a sordid history of that kind of thing, but it shows the change I think as a result of everything that happened in 2017.
Yeah. I'm not really a big fan of like banning people for reasons not related to movies, though.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting question.
Plus these are allegations, and I don't know anything about what actually happened. But if you can just have someone accuse you of something, and then you're removed from awards and whatever else, you're unhireable suddenly, then that's kind of scary.
Yeah, but false allegations are super rare. Like percentage wise, like super rare.
Well, it doesn't matter how rare it is. I mean, that if there's someone who's upset with you, it just takes one person.
Yeah. Well, the thing I find more interesting is that conversation is if the award is for best actor.
Yeah.
Then the award should go to the best actor.
Right. Exactly.
However, the award shows are inherently political, and there's the other half of do you want the Academy to hoist a person on their shoulders that does not represent things that they represent. So it becomes this weird gray area, and I'm not sure what the right answer is there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, don't want to stick up for James Franco too much because he seems like a total douche, but
Yes.
But yeah, it does make me a little. It is a little bit annoying to me how political it is, and also like a lot of these movies, you probably know more about it than I do, but there's like campaigns to get Oscars, movies nominated for Oscars.
Yeah, I mean,
and stuff,
movies that don't have a lot of money backing them do not get nominated for Academy Awards, because not only do you have to make sure that screeners get to every member of the Academy, and it's expensive to print off discs and mail them to every member of the Academy, but yeah, you need people working it. You need marketing, not marketing to the consumer, but marketing specifically to the Academy, the for your consideration things. Like it is expensive to win an Academy Award.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just all this stuff besides movies. It kind of made me lose faith in like the awards meaning anything,
to me, and I'm more interested in the people nominated than I am in the actual winners. Like, it's fun. Like, we're going to cover the winners when it comes around. I always have a big Oscars party at my place every year. It's fun, but I like seeing who's nominated, and at a pretty decent list of what was some of the best films of the year. Never complete.
Right. And it's fun to celebrate movies that are good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Speaking of things that were left off of the list, The Florida Project was left almost completely out, which was pretty surprising. The only thing I think it got nominated for was a supporting actor nomination for Willem Dafoe, which that is well earned because he was great in that film. But I was a little surprised to see it not nominated for picture or anywhere else. So it's kind of a bummer. I really liked that movie.
Yeah.
Related to that category, Christopher Plummer was nominated for All the Money in the World, which is the role that he replaced Kevin Spacey in last minute. I think this is probably partially honoring him for turning out that good of a performance that quickly, and also just kind of like a continuing big old fuck you to Kevin Spacey.
So did he finish the movie, Kevin Spacey, and then they edited him out?
The movie was done. The movie was done.
Yeah.
And if not like final like being completely put together, like it was done in principal photography. They were editing it together when all this broke, and they basically made the decision, no, we're taking him out. And like, I saw the movie and I was very surprised. Kevin Spacey's role was a supporting one, sure, but it was not a small one. It was not like a couple scenes or anything. He was in a lot of scenes in this movie. So what they did was pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. So I appreciate them honoring Christopher Plummer for that. Mm-hmm. I didn't think the movie was that good, but yeah, he did a good job, especially considering he had, I think, 2 weeks to do it in.
Right.
So, yeah. Also, The Big Sick was nominated for Best Original Screenplay. I don't have anything else to say other than that makes me happy because I really, really liked that movie.
Yeah, I'm still not going to see it just because it sounds like someone throwing up a lot.
That's fair. Logan, Michael, was nominated for Best Adaptive Screenplay, making it the first comic book movie to break out of just the technical categories since The Dark Knight, and the first comic book movie nominated for a writing Oscar ever.
I think of all of the comic book movies, this one probably deserves it the most. It was at least trying to say something, but I don't know if it. I don't know if it. I ultimately. Well, I don't know what is it up against.
I didn't have it ready. It is up against Call Me by Your Name, The Disaster Artist, Molly's Game, and Mudbound.
Okay. Yeah, I guess. Okay, I like it.
Yeah, it's not going to win. I think Call Me by Your Name is going to win, or Molly's Game, or maybe Mudbound. That'd be cool, but it's just cool. It's cool to be nominated. I thought that was a very good movie.
I'm glad that they looked at it.
Yeah.
Instead of just dismissing it.
Yep. And lastly, Michael, as you said, the Lego Batman movie was tragically and unfairly snubbed from the Oscars. It did not get nominated in the Best Animated Film category. The nominees were, if you're curious, Coco, the clear favorite, The Breadwinner, which is supposed to be very good, I haven't seen, Ferdinand, the John Cena bull movie, Loving Vincent, which is supposed to be remarkable, and the Boss Baby.
God damn it. That makes me kind of mad because the Lego Batman movie was actually brilliant.
It was
It
very
was
yeah.
the
I
best,
don't.
It was the best take on Batman. It was lighthearted, but it had some awesome messages in it. I think that people in the Academy didn't see these movies, and I think they just voted and they were like, "Oh, yeah, Coco, that's the Pixar movie, so we'll nominate that." Obviously, not that Coco wasn't good.
Yeah,
but Ferdinand, I think I didn't go see that, but I thought it was supposed to have been pretty mediocre.
Yeah, this is Michael the political game in action, the marketing game. The Boss Baby was a DreamWorks film, I believe. They have a lot of money behind them, and they probably pushed for this nomination pretty hard.
Yeah,
it's not like
Lego's only goal is to sell toys.
Right. I mean, Lego had WB behind it, but yeah. I don't know. I wonder if people saw that movie. I wonder if people saw the Lego movie, or they just wrote it off as either A, another comic book movie, or B, just another one of those silly Lego movies.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Silly Lego movie. That's ridiculous. Kids these days and their Legos.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, the whole thing about the Academy, the shift, the difference this year is because the Academy is becoming more inclusive. They've let in a bunch of new members. It's not just old dudes anymore. And I hoped that would be reflected in stuff like, and I think it is. Like this year, another thing we had to talk about is this ties the record for the most women nominated for awards this year, which is great. And I think that reflects these Academies' efforts to increase and diversify their membership, and also put forth and celebrate diverse films, and also just like that it was a great year for women. Like 2017 was a great year for women. That's all great, but yeah, there's still some, like the more there's changes and moves, there's still some decisions that just don't make sense. And while I don't think The Boss Baby was like the piece of shit awful movie that everyone made it out to be, there were certainly better animated movies than it this year that should be in this category.
Like Lego Batman.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. So that's it for the Oscars. The ceremony itself is March 4th this year. So we will be back after that, I'm sure, to talk about who won and see if anything as ridiculous as last year's ceremony happens, where they read the wrong name of the movie.
Yeah, I bet that'll never happen again. I bet they've redesigned their cards.
Yeah.
And yeah.
They've completely redone the whole system, probably, and hopefully fired the people responsible for doing that, for handling and managing that, because they already had safeguards in place to make sure that didn't happen. They just all failed.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, that's the Oscars. Moving along, a couple more pieces of news. This is just something that I'm promoting because I think it's great. Charlie Kaufman, one of my favorite writers and directors, he did Being John Malkovich, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and Anomalisa adaptation. He will be adapting the book I'm Thinking of Ending Things, which is a horror novel by Ian Reid. I've never read the book. Have you read this book? Have you heard of this book?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to check it out now that I know Kaufman's doing an adaptation on it. But yeah, I'm always, my stance here is this podcast is part mine, and I'm going to report on Kaufman news every time I want to, every time there is Kaufman news, because I think he's a genius, and I think not enough people see his stuff. So if one more person checks out Charlie Kaufman, because I continually report on his things, then I'll be happy with that. But he's also like historically good at adapting things, even like really, really difficult things to adapt, like Adaptation, which is adapting a book about orchids, and he makes the thing about it. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, Michael. It's crazy, ridiculous, and wonderful.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah. But the summary of this novel is the story follows Jake on a road trip to meet his parents on their secluded farm with his girlfriend, who is thinking of ending things, when Jake makes an unexpected detour, leaving her stranded. A twisted mix of palpable tension, psychological frailty, and sheer terror ensues. And that all seems like right up Charlie Kaufman's alley.
I like psychological frailty.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to check that book out, and we will anxiously be awaiting that movie to come out.
Yes.
So that is Charlie Kaufman, and I'm Thinking of Ending Things. I don't think there's word yet on when that's actually going to come out yet, but...
This year?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But Michael, more news that I've tailored for you.
Oh.
Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. Officially getting a sequel.
Interesting.
It's official, yeah. Currently scheduled for Christmas 2019. So it's basically deciding, hey, we went toe-to-toe with Star Wars again last time, and it worked out pretty well for us. So we're going to do it again, because that's when Episode 9 comes out.
Yeah, show Star Wars who's boss.
Yeah. Let's talk about this movie for a bit, Michael, because we both really like this movie. You put it in your top 5.
I did.
And this movie has been blowing up the box office. It's been doing crazy. It's currently, as of this weekend, at $338 million in the US, $484 million overseas, for a total gross of $822 million, which for this movie is just insane. It's insane.
Yeah, I think people want to see movies like this, like an actual good, fun comedy. And there aren't that many that are made.
Yeah.
Like most of the comedies made these days rely on like stupid humor, like stupid, like fart-based humor. And I think Jumanji got some criticism for being that, but in my opinion, it wasn't.
It had some, but yeah, it was definitely more than just that.
Yeah, it had like a moral basis to it.
Yeah.
That most comedies kind of like eschew meaning these days.
Yeah.
But Jumanji had like lessons and growth in it, which were tied well into the characters and the narrative and the humor.
Yeah. It was a really solid script, I think. And the script is the backbone to any movie. And so it's one of those success stories that you're just so happy to see, because they could have just made this a retread of the original in every way. They could have spent it doing callback references and jokes, and they did a few of them. They're in there, but they're definitely not front and center of the film.
I'm glad the only reference to Robin Williams was like the one little plaque on the house. Yeah. But that being said, I'm not like super optimistic about the sequel.
No.
Because I don't know, like if they somehow bring the same characters back, then that seems dumb. Because I don't like. This doesn't seem why. Right, why would they go play the game again? And if they have new characters, like they've already done the new thing where it's like a video game. So I don't know. I don't know what the sequel would bring. I generally think sequels are a bad idea, especially in this case.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I will give them the benefit of the doubt, because I never would have expected this movie would be as good as it was. Right. So. But yeah, it's just this movie, like, it's not slowing down either. Like, this is the 8th weekend that it's been out, and it's still number 2 at the box office. And it's only beat by Maze Runner, the movie we're talking about this week, because that's a brand new movie. And we joked that it might pass Justice League. It has. It's passed Justice League. It's probably going to end at $200 million more than Justice League brought in, which has the 2 most well-recognized characters in pop culture in it. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. Yeah, but like I said, I think it's just there really aren't any movies like this that it's competing with. Right.
And it's one of those ones that I think fun for the whole family is a trite phrase, but it works.
That's another thing, is that most comedies these days are written for adults. Like, they feel like they need to be really edgy. Or written directly for children, which is generally more broad reaching, because most of the children's movies these days try to include some humor for adults as well. But yeah, this has a pretty wide audience, and there's just not a lot of movies like it.
Completely agree. Yeah, it's that for children but also appeals to adults lane that Pixar has run so well. And it's good to see other people play in that a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on then. Let's talk about Maze Runner: The Death Cure.
3 years we spent behind walls trying to break out, and now we want to break back in. I get shotgun.
You can't save everyone, Thomas.
I could try. When the hell does it stop?
It stops when we find a cure.
There is no cure!
And before we get into talking about the third movie, Michael, I wanted to go back. I wanted to go back in time to 2014.
2014, the good old days.
Back in time. Yeah, back before everything weird happened in the world, and we thought things made sense. Let's talk about the first Maze Runner, because I think this is a movie you saw before me and convinced me to see it, because you surprisingly quite enjoyed it. Not surprisingly because it's you, but just surprisingly because this seemed like at the time Hunger Games was big, so they were taking all these YA dystopian books and turning them into the movies. That's where the I just forgot the name of it because it's so bad. What's the name of it? Damn it.
The other YA series?
Yeah.
Divergent?
Divergent. Yeah.
Yeah. I never saw that one.
Yeah, neither did I. But so we 2014, we were living in a time where all these movies were hitting theaters because they were taking these books. They were trying to piggyback off the Hunger Games train. And this movie,
the time of the vampire romance novel was over. And there
and
was
the
a void, and it was filled by dystopian death game young adult novels.
Yep. But then this movie came out. I think we should say up front, neither of us have ever read the books, right? I've never
read the books.
Yeah, neither have I. So we've never read the books, but this movie came out, and it was surprisingly good.
And I think it was good because it was a good concept.
Yeah.
It's cool to have like a character like wake up in like this weird glade with these other boys, and they're surrounded by a maze, and like they're mapping out the maze, and there's like creatures in it, and like no one knows what's going on.
Yeah.
So it was a great concept, and the characters were good enough that it worked.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, they basically said, okay, Lord of the Flies, but what if in maze? And I think that was a really good idea, because not only do you have this internal conflict and struggle between all these guys trying to coexist and live together in this place, but then you have the external conflict, which is we might have a way out of here, but we have to risk our lives to do it. And I think that's a really good combination. I think it worked really well. And then the movie ended. And I think that's where this is one of those series for me, and I don't know if you're going to agree with me, that the more you learn about the world, the less interesting it is.
I completely agree. And you mentioned to me on text yesterday that like you'd rewatched it, and I asked you whether it held up, and you said the ending kind of fell flat. And I remember that when I watched it the first time too. It's like I don't actually want to know that this is some kind of weird lab test for these boys. Like they should like emerge from the maze and then like maybe fade to white or something.
Yeah. But it didn't. And that's the one thing about every single one of these movies, because I watched all three. I watched both the first two movies in preparation for seeing this third one. They all kind of outstay their welcome a little bit. They're all like about 20 minutes too long, where it's just like, okay, I'm ready for the movie to end. And the third movie ends, and I wish it had just cut on them getting out of the maze and done. Instead, it has to start moving into and start setting up the plot of the second one, which you're absolutely right, becomes this conspiracy about this evil corporation in a post-apocalyptic wasteland who is testing kids because they're immune to some zombie-like disease.
I kind of liked in the second one how they moved on to a new thing, because like let's compare it to the Hunger Games. Okay, the Hunger Games was also a great concept.
Mm-hmm.
The first book / movie, I don't remember the movie very well, to be honest, but the first book was really good. Second book / movie was the same thing. It's like, now you're going to do it again. There's going to be another Hunger Game.
Yep.
And it was really unnecessary, and it didn't have the same kind of impact as the first time. Here, they don't do that. Like, it's called the Maze Runner series, but there hasn't been a maze since, like, the middle end of the first movie.
Right.
So it has nothing to do with maze running. But then the second movie, they're like, okay, now the second movie is going to be a zombie post-apocalyptic movie.
Right.
And I thought that was fun. I thought, it's like, yeah, you should go with that. I don't remember the second movie being particularly well executed. What did you think when you watched it yesterday?
It's like, the thing about these movies is that I think the thing that keeps these movies going is Dylan O'Brien, the actor who plays Thomas, the main character, is pretty good. He's very charismatic. He's like, it's fun watching him go through these hardships, and I think he kind of carries the films. So yeah, I mean, the story of Maze Runner 2, The Scorch Trials, is not particularly interesting, but it's propulsive. It moves. I mean, this movie, like, they jump from action scene to action scene. It is not a quiet movie. They have like lulls in action, but then they like push you right on to the next one. Yeah. And like, it's almost like they're exploring the world again, right, but in a way that's like, it's not very exposition heavy, and it's just very kind of like you feel like you're only seeing a piece of what's going on.
Right.
Like you're in these kids' heads who don't know everything, don't know what's going on, and they're running up against these traitors and this other city and the zombies that they didn't even realize they were there, and you feel like you're just seeing a little corner of what this post-apocalyptic world is.
And that's what was kind of fun about the whole series is these group of characters that you're introduced to who've all like lost their memories and everything, like figuring out and surviving. Right. And so it was a good decision to like, because after they escaped from the maze, there needed to be something else. And it was a good decision to be like, okay, well now there's like zombies for some reason and they don't know why. And like the world is destroyed and they're still figuring things out and they're still trying to survive. And that was something that I felt, now moving on to the third movie, that we just saw, was lacking, is that it was no longer like a survivey, figure things outy type thing. They kind of had to build up. There's this thing in these like trilogies where like the last movie has to be like the grand war against the evil thing. Yes. And that like never works.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And So we've officially moved on to The Death Cure now, Maze Runner: The Death Cure. And I think in standard Daily Planet podcast review form, we're going to talk about it very vaguely at first, and then we're going to jump into spoilers. So if for some reason you really want to see this movie and haven't yet, you can stop listening once we get to spoilers. Anyway, yeah, so I guess the thing to be said here, the big thing we have to talk about is that this movie was supposed to come out a year ago, and it didn't, because Dylan O'Brien, its star, was injured during a stunt. He was run over by a car. Damn. And it's the first shot of the movie. The movie opens on this train heist, and that's when he was hurt. And I read somewhere that they actually used the take he was hurt on in the movie. The director said it was the best take and asked Dylan, said, "Would you be okay if we used this version?" And he said, "No, I think you have to. Like, please do, because it makes it worth it." Yeah. Yeah. So he was very seriously injured.
Was that when he was jumping onto the train?
Yeah. Or when he was on top of the car, one of the two. Apparently the car was only going 10 miles an hour, and they digitally made it look like it was going faster. But
he fell off the front and got
run over. Yeah. So they shut the movie down completely to give him full time to heal. So the movie came out a full year later than it was. And that's very interesting, because like in the time between when the movie was supposed to come out and when it did, the whole world kind of moved on from the YA dystopian novel thing.
It's crazy because this, I mean, it didn't, the first ones didn't come out that long ago. Like when I heard this movie was coming out, I was like, oh wow, the Maze Runner movies, was that like 8 years ago? When did that,
You're
when
right.
did that happen? Right. And I kind of am generally critical of these movies that come out like yearly,
right?
In a series, because it's like, well, you didn't spend that much time working on it, did you? But I kind of see why they do that now, because it does seem like the whole world has moved on from this and like all young adult movies.
I mean, the Divergent series didn't even end; they just stopped it. Like they didn't. Really? They didn't do the last movie. The last movie, they were like, okay, we're going to do the movie, and they were like, no, we're going to do a TV show instead. And then they were just like, nah, we're not gonna.
Yeah, no one really liked it that much.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess it means something that they finished it, and also that they didn't do the thing. Remember when all the people, they were dividing the last book into two movies? They didn't do that here either.
I'm glad they didn't do that, because that's like a double stupid movie. Our idea is, I saw like the first part of Hunger Games 3, and it just like ended. Yeah, and it's just like, okay, well this is not a movie on its own, and I'm not even going to see the second part of it, because this was such a waste of time.
Yeah. Yeah, so back to the movie itself. Wes Ball directed all three of these films. And you can tell, but when watching them in quick succession like I did, you can tell that this is the same guy at the helm of all three of them. He shoots action in a very like propulsive kind of way. Like it is funny that the movie is called Maze Runner, because this movie deals with people running a lot. Like there's a lot of scenes where people are running. Yeah. Especially in this one. But I agree with what you were saying about how the mystery of the world and the most interesting part of it, which is this group of kids dealing with discovering what the world is really like, was kind of gone, and it almost broke it to an unbelievable level. Now there's a big giant city that exists somewhere.
This seemed more just like a dumb action movie, without the interesting elements,
right?
And kind of. It's an interesting study in what I guess I could call like the J.J. Abrams technique, from Lost and some of his movies, where you introduce a lot of questions and that makes it really interesting. In Lost, none of the questions were ever like wrapped up in the middle. They just kept adding layers and layers of things, and it eventually got tiresome. And then they even ruined it further by like trying to explain it in the last season. Yeah. Which completely fell flat. And there's like no way they could have made that work really. Here, they kind of had the right idea, and it's not like they kept adding layers of unexplained things. Like they finished the maze thing, and then they went out into the world, and there was like the new unexplained thing of the zombies or whatever. And I think that's the right way to do it. But then this movie, there was no mystery. It was just like, here's the big bad. We got to take him down. And it didn't really, it wasn't that interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's a fundamental question at the core of these movies that I think we can talk about that doesn't get too much into spoilers, but that has to do with this moral dilemma. Because the question at the center of all these films, it's not clear in the first one, but you learn it, is that these kids are immune to this virus, and they might be able to help find a cure that cures everyone. So the moral dilemma at the center of these movies is it okay to torture, abuse, and kill 300 people if it means every single other person on the planet is saved? And the movie like posits that question, but like then stays as far away from it as possible. It never actually wants to get into the weeds of the complex morality of that question.
Right. I feel like it takes a pretty strong stance on the side of the immunes. Right.
It does. And I think
you're right. There's definitely the potential, and we know from the last movie that Teresa has like joined the research people.
Right. She's betrayed them all and gone back to Wicked, the most on the nose bad name of an organization in the world.
And they definitely had the potential to be like, maybe these people have a point. But they kind of ruined it in this movie, which we can get into when the spoilers occur, with basically Littlefinger's character.
Yeah, I agree. I know what you're going to say, and I completely agree. And that's the weirdest thing, is that like this is a movie in which the bad guys are trying to save the world, and the good guys are saying, "Just leave me alone." Yeah. And if you're gonna structure your story like that, that's great and interesting. But you need to turn into that central like relationship and the morality between there, and say, well, are you really bad? Am I really good? Like, but the movie doesn't want to do that. It doesn't want to be that complicated. So it just kind of stays away from it.
That could have been an interesting take on the last movie.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not sure if that kind of thing belonged in this series.
No.
But they kind of ended up with something that didn't work either way.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about before we moved into spoilers, did this movie felt a little video gamey to me. It felt like there were levels, and we moved from one level to the other, and then we had like a character cutscene in between them, and then moved on to the next level.
Yeah, I could see that. I can definitely see that. I think in some way, all action movies kind of work like that.
Sure. But
you have your action scenes and then you have your little cutscenes between them.
Yeah, but I think it's normally a little more fluid. This felt very choppy to me. Maybe it's just because the writing isn't as good, so it more closely resembles video game writing than the writing in a film. So I was more in tune to it, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I think it's best left for spoilers, actually.
Yeah. Do you have anything else? We haven't talked very long about it because there's not too much to say without going into spoilers. But do you have anything else you wanted to talk about generally?
No, I think my conclusion is not in non-spoilers. I wouldn't really recommend it. I mean, if you're like a big fan of the series, sure, go finish it. But I think it's missing a lot of the things that made the first few interesting and kind of stand out from a just typical empty action movie.
I agree. And it's also too long. It's 2 hours and 22 minutes long, Michael. That's way too long.
Yes, I agree. So that's not your usual criticism from you.
Well,
but,
if I don't care if a movie's long, if it earns that length. I think this movie, I felt like we were approaching the end, and then it just kept unfolding and unfolding and unfolding, and I was like, wow, I need to go.
I agree. I think in general, I think it's rare that a movie needs to be more than 2 hours.
And I think this movie, like, I don't know if it felt long because it feels like a movie that felt the weight of being the third in a trilogy, but it's a trilogy that people don't care about. So like all like the really melodramatic stuff that finished off the movie, like it almost had as many endings as Lord of the Rings did.
And it didn't have a lot of effect. And maybe part of that was because of the time period, but also it just like it wasn't the type of series where this type of stuff should have an effect.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Yeah. All right, so let's jump into spoilers then and see if we can crack this thing and figure out exactly what went wrong. So from here on out, spoilers for The Maze Runner: The Death Cure. All right, Michael. Let's talk about Littlefinger.
Yeah, so here's one of the main things that ruined the whole moral conflict. And that was like all of the villain characters.
Yes.
Who appeared to be very idealistic and focused on a particular goal, but then undermine themselves at every occasion.
Yeah.
So to just do the evil thing for no reason.
Uh-huh. Are you talking when Littlefinger shot the other doctor? I can't remember her name.
That was one very puzzling moment because before that, he was just like, no, don't give up. Like, you almost admired him for being like, well, we can fix this new thing that's wrong.
Right.
We're going to cure everyone. It doesn't matter the cost. Yeah, and then he just shoots the doctor who's like got all of the cure knowledge.
Yeah. And then starts spouting about how now that we have the cure, we can control who gets it and who doesn't.
Right.
This methodology and this ideology that never existed in this character up until this point.
Right. And Thomas had just turned himself in. Like he just made the choice to be like, you know what, maybe you guys are right.
Yeah.
And then for some reason, like instead of just letting him walk up to the lab, he shoots the other person and like sedates him and drags him up to the lab.
Like I came back.
Yeah, just to be antagonistic.
Right. And I thought the movie did such a good job of motivating his decision there because he just had to kill one of his closest friends. And then he thinks to himself, if I turn myself in, I could make sure this never happens again.
Right.
And I think that's a great motivating turn. But then you're right. They completely throw it away by making this guy just basic, boring evil.
Yeah. Which was too bad. And like, yeah, it could have been different. Another thing is like, he's not a good actor.
Who?
the Littlefinger guy. Who is that?
Oh, you don't. Aidan Gillen.
Aidan Gillen. He always he doesn't. He's good at playing a villain in like a over the top way.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not good at playing a human that's multifaceted. Like everything he says sounds evil, no matter what he's doing.
It does. Yeah, you're right. Like the elevator scene.
Yeah.
Where he's like talking to Teresa on the elevator,
right.
And
he sounded evil.
I mean, that was funny though. Like there's parts in this movie that I think are done really well. And that's the frustrating thing about it, is there are parts of it I really liked. I actually really like the reason I think it's video gamey is because like it feels like one of those zombie survival games where like you go from the zombie level to the human level to the zombie/human level, and then like the army level. Like it just that's why it felt that way. But I actually liked the tunnel scene. I thought that was done pretty well.
You're talking about where they're driving into the tunnel and their car overturns.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there was things like that where they're like exploring new things. That's kind of the heart of the series. So that, you're right. That kind of worked because it's just like the kids and they're on their own and they're getting in all these scrapes and they don't really know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But the escape from that was just not quite Deus Ex Machina, but just having, their friends show up and
I think that's an okay plot device too. You're right. It's not really a Deus Ex Machina. It's something else, but they use it too much. They lean on it so much.
Right, they do.
And that gets boring when like everything is get in an unescapable situation, then friend shows up to escape to free you from it.
Right. And it starting from the first scene, it kind of the rebels are shown to really have too much power, like with their little plan to take over the airship and stuff that worked kind of too well.
It did work really well.
It kind of defeats the frame of that, like you're rooting for the underdogs. Because all of the wicked people are shown to be quite stupid and you can take advantage of them. And it sets a bad tone, I think. It was kind of a cool idea to start the movie with like a train heist. Yeah. But I think it should have been done more from like everything's going wrong perspective instead of we have this ingenious plan and everything's going to go right perspective.
Right. Like they save people, but they also fail. So why wouldn't the movie just let them fail? Like they fail and barely get away, and now like you can keep the movie after that almost exactly the same, where the main leader guy's like, okay, we got to go now. Like we tried it didn't work. We've got to go. And why didn't they? I don't. You wouldn't have to change much after that.
Right. You didn't need any of the like luring the airship to a canyon and abducting it, and it could have just been the train. It could have been focused on the train thing. Maybe another main character gets killed and it's a big disaster. Maybe they managed to detach a train car and their friend's not in it. And it would have been the exact same thing. But they wanted to start with a victory, I guess.
Yeah. Which is a fair sentiment. I mean, like there's, especially in trilogies, you start off with this almost removed from the main plot action scene.
Right.
That just reintroduces you to all your characters.
Right.
But yeah. So let's talk about Teresa a little bit. Who I don't know what they were doing with this character, because she represents that moral gray area, right? She is representative of this is possibly the right thing.
I think what she represents, and I think I read this back when the first movie came out, is it's a biblical allegory, and she's Eve. So, one way of interpreting it is that there's nothing good about her at all, and that she's pursuing like this forbidden knowledge, which is the immoral thing to do, which I disagree with. I think it's like, well, yeah, they should be looking for a cure. I don't see why they have to be so antagonistic about it. I feel like Thomas would probably volunteer, as he ends up doing, if they were just a little bit more open with what they were doing.
Yeah.
Well,
the thing that never set right in me in this whole series was, like, why do they have to? Why does torturing them make the cure better?
Right.
Like, I'd never got that.
It doesn't make sense, except that it needs to be something unpleasant so that you don't like it.
Right. And then there's the one line where they say, like, when they're torturing Miho and making him relive his time in the maze, basically, and they're like, it's potent, not nearly as potent as the maze was. And so I'm like, so why did you stop doing the mazes then? Like, you're clearly still in power, And I know like there's in the second movie there's lip service to the right hand like freeing some of the people from mazes, but they just gave up on the maze trials, and I guess they thought they were ready, but they weren't because they didn't have the cure yet. I don't know. It's just confusing.
The maze thing didn't make sense to begin with. Why would that?
Yeah.
Why would like removing them from any of the zombies make them more immune? Or it's not
because
clear,
you're giving them hardship, and
they were already immune.
Yeah,
but and then Thomas's blood just works even when he's not scared
because he's the chosen one.
Because he's the chosen one. So none of that made any sense ever. But I'm willing to kind of ignore that.
Yeah, that's fair.
If things are done well around it. But yeah, they had the chance to set up the wicked as like ultimately sympathetic or even the good guys.
Right.
But they sabotage that at every turn.
Yeah, especially since the opposing army in this movie, in the big army clash, because we have to have that, is just normal suffering people that, and Michael, maybe you can explain this to me, they blow up the city? I thought they wanted to be in the city.
That didn't make any sense. There was the zombie character who was kind of cool character.
Yeah, that's played by Walton Goggins, who's great. Yeah, I liked him a lot in that.
He's great, and he had an interesting character who was like somehow infected a lot, but still not turned, and they wanted to get in the city so they'd be safe from the zombies.
Yeah, so they blow up the wall.
So they blow it up, so it's no longer safe from the zombies. Just out of spite, I guess, which is actually believable, but not really like how they'd set up this character, I guess. He was more set up to be like maybe some kind of calm mastermind, and not a martyr who is just going to end the world.
Yeah.
So that didn't really make sense.
Which is interesting because they kind of basically already admit at that point that the world is over. Like by this point, by the end of the movie, the virus has gone airborne.
Yeah.
Nobody is safe. The world is ending except for these immunes. And so, okay, kind of jumping around here, but the ending. So they're on the safe haven island. Presumably, like, the virus still exists and will come over there, but they've got Thomas there.
Well,
he's the cure.
They're all immune on the island, though, right?
Because there's some. I thought only younger people were immune.
Yeah, but those were all the people except for maybe Vincent.
Yeah. So there's a couple adults there, and then just a bunch of kids that are presumably immune.
And I think because I know lots of the earlier stuff was influenced by like biblical ideas. I feel like that's kind of what this was too. Is like there's been a flood basically that's ended humanity and its sins, and now the younger pure generation will rebuild it.
Yeah.
Which was,
and I think that's a very interesting conflict that the movie like pays a little bit of lip service to, is this idea of the new generation versus the old generation, where the older generation is basically deciding we are willing to sacrifice the new generation to keep us, the older dying generation, alive. Mm-hmm. And then the new younger generation completely rejects that philosophy, which makes sense because it's written for them. This is a YA story, so it's written for young people. So, but again, I don't know if that conflict ever like came to the forefront. Like it's just kind of there in the background, and that's fine. But it was never really explored, I guess.
Right. I mean, there was one scene that looked like it was going to explore it, and that's when Jansen, Littlefinger, was like talking to scientist lady, and the scientist lady was like, "It's time to give up and let the younger generation survive." Right. And Jansen was like, "You shouldn't never give up.
Yeah,
We'll fight until the end, and we'll fix this thing." And both of those perspectives are really in that. Like, I was all on board with Jansen. I was like, "Yeah, don't give up.
Just keep torturing children."
Yeah, just do it. Which was, but yeah, again, there's never any reason to actually torture them. So. Yeah, it wasn't explored well.
Yeah, and I think that would have been if that's the two main sides of the conflict. Like, I loved her line in that. It's like, it's not about giving up, it's about realizing you've already lost. And that's an interesting conflict between the two of them there that was resolved by one shooting the other in the back suddenly.
Yeah, even though she was like the only person who could have cured it.
Yeah,
except for the other girl who he was probably
who he also
kill.
tries to kill. And I felt like there were, this is just nitpicking now, but there were a lot of scenes of one person like having to slowly drag another person.
Right.
That's why the ending felt very long to me, because you have like, they've gotten out, they have his best friend Newt, who is infected with the virus because they decided to retcon the beginning to say that not everyone in the maze was immune, just a few of
they needed someone to die slowly.
Yeah, exactly. And then so he's dragging him, and then he dies, and there's that tragedy, but then we go into like climax number 2 when they're back in the building with all the fighting in there again, and then Thomas gets shot, and then he's slowly dragged around, and it's like, oh god.
Yeah,
that's when I really when they were on the roof trying to jump to the chopper, and like that's like a good minute of the scene. That's where I really felt the length of the movie, because I'm like Thomas is like slowly walking, and this is supposed to be the big final action point climax of the movie, and by then I was just like,
yeah, I didn't care, like, because they had him go back, and that was supposed to be like, oh, he's making a decision, he's gonna save people, and then that doesn't happen because they just decide to have a shootout. And so yeah, it starts to feel pointless at that point, because it's like, oh, we were going to do something that wasn't action, and then we turned that into action.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a drawn out ending.
Yeah. But I will still say that dead people reading notes aloud to their friends after they've died is always an emotional gut punch for me. Like, even if I didn't care about any of the characters, when I was listening to Newt read the note aloud to me, I was like, well, this is sad now.
Yeah. I hadn't rewatched the earlier movie, so I didn't really have any emotional connection to Newt. Right.
That's, I wondered about that, as like, especially for people watching it who hadn't seen either of them in forever, like how much of this friendship between these guys, because the whole emotional core of the movie is predicated on the fact that Thomas really likes Miho and is willing to risk his entire life and the life of his friends to get him back.
Yeah, and I kind of remembered that from the first movies, because Minho was like the other competent runner.
Right, he's the one that spent the night with him in the maze that first time.
And that was effective, like bonding. Mm-hmm. I didn't remember Newt so much. I remember him as kind of being maybe like the kind of Simon or Piggy of the. Well,
there was an actual Piggy. He died. That was the Chuck guy that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. But Newt was kind of like the moral one, I think.
Yes.
Right? He's kind of like
he was the second in command that took over and backed Thomas when he needed it. So they were very close. I mean, the movie didn't change it to make that work. They were very close, and they experienced this whole thing together. That crew of the 4 of them, I thought was pretty well established when you watch the movies back to back to back.
Right.
Although I couldn't tell you what the one guy's name was. I'm looking at IMDb right now, and it says his name was Frypan. I don't remember that.
Yeah, well, I remember they called him Fry. I didn't remember it from the first one.
Yeah, okay. So how did you feel, before we finish up, they brought back Gally, Will Poulter's character, the bad guy from the first one. How did you feel about that decision?
I thought it was fine. I thought it was unnecessary.
Yeah.
I'm
pretty sure he was dead.
I wasn't like, yay, he's back. I was just like, oh, they went there.
Yeah. And I try to look at this as how this is exploring Thomas's character arc.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's supposed to set up the fact that he's forgiving. I don't know, like there's this weird his interaction with everyone outside of his core group is a little weird, because he has this thing with Teresa where he hates her but loves her. And then we didn't even talk about his thing with Brenda, played by Rosa Salazar, who's the other girl he meets, which
was just like a thing from the second movie.
Yeah.
That they thought they should continue, but
Right.
like didn't.
Also, Rosa Salazar is playing Alita in the Battle Angel movie that's coming out this year. And I guess when they were filming this, when they had to pick it back up again, she was also filming that because she has the exact same hair. And they played the trailer for Alita before this movie started. And so I couldn't stop seeing her with the big anime eyes in my head, which just ruined everything for me. So I couldn't take this character seriously.
Yeah, she was fine. It's just, it felt like they had too many balls up in the air.
Yeah.
They had too many like character interactions that they were trying to make important, but as a result, none of them really felt that important.
Mm-hmm.
Like even the thing like they're going to rescue Minho, and that should have been a bigger deal when they finally rescued him, but then he doesn't really do anything after they rescue him.
Yeah.
And they kind of teased that he and Brenda were like in love with each other. Thomas and Brenda were in love with each other, but that they didn't really do anything with that.
No.
They had the thing with Newt where Newt was dying, and that they did kind of give a couple moments, because the letter at the end and then his actual like being dragged to the chopper
Yeah.
and then fighting and stuff. But the Teresa thing, that was another one where it was like, oh, remember Teresa? Remember how much you liked Teresa, but she betrayed you. How do you feel about that?
And then he had his ongoing thing with Jansen too. You're right. That's a lot of balls in the air.
There were a lot of balls, and none of them really landed.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the Teresa thing, because that had been building for a couple movies,
right?
And even in the first movie, it was like, oh, who's this girl who's been here? Oh, she has some connection to Thomas. But then he just like goes back, and they kind of like run away from the bad guy together, and then it ends.
Well, that's because like Teresa never really has to make a moral choice in this movie, and that's why I think it's bungled, because like Littlefinger gives his evil, nefarious plan about how we're going to keep the cure for only those that deserve it in front of Teresa, basically taking away her choice and making it for her, because obviously she's not going to be for that. Her whole thing is, we have to save everyone, and if this is the cost we have to pay, then I am willing to pay it. But then you take that away and just make it black and white evil. Like it takes away like the meaningfulness of her decision.
It makes it seem like her decision was wrong. Like she didn't realize she was working for the villains, and then when she did realize, she's like, "Ah, fuck it."
Exactly.
So yeah, it was the wrong decision. Like she should have been kind of the boss at the end, I think, and then something should have happened between her and Thomas, and Thomas was basically Jesus, so he probably should have died for our sins. He probably should have died to like release the cure to everyone or something. I don't know, because the fact that he was the cure also didn't end up saving literally anyone.
Right. And there's like the end of the movie, he pulls the cure, the manufactured cure out of his pocket, and he looks at it and looks out to the ocean. And is that supposed to be indicative of, I'm going to go out there and cure people or not? Like, I don't know what that means.
That's true. The ending also was unrelated, because it's like, yeah, we've escaped. We've run away from the problem.
Right.
And that's our victory.
Yep.
It wasn't really the right or one of the right ways to go with it, I don't think.
Yeah. That being said, I still think like I think Wes Ball, who hasn't directed a lot of things, is a fairly good action director. I think some of the set pieces in this are interesting. I think they just overstay their welcome a little bit. I think there were thrilling parts of this movie. Overall, I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it either.
Yeah.
I think I saw the first Divergent movie, Michael. I think that's the only one I've seen. That's god awful. So I think out of the crop of YA dystopian books made into movies, I probably think I would call the Maze Runner series the best.
I agree. Even Hunger Games, which is probably the biggest one. I don't think the movies were that great.
I do not think they were very. Actually, you spoke bad about the third one, and I enjoyed the third one because it was basically a movie all about propaganda, and I thought that was interesting. But the rest of the movies, no, I did not care for at all.
Right. And yeah, he is a good. They are well directed movies, but one of the things that is hard to do with sequels is that in action movies, is that for action movies, like you have to care about the characters in order for you to care about the action scenes, and you have to believe that the characters are in actual danger. And he's generally been good at that. But the thing with the sequel is like you don't know how much to rely on the previous movies. And I think in this one, he had to rely a lot on the previous movies to make you care because there were so many characters and so many things going on. And he didn't really take the time to remake you care. So like the thing with Newt, like I'd lost that connection. And I didn't care that much about Teresa anymore. And so I'd lost a lot of the like reliant on previous movies in the trilogy. Like, so I didn't care about the action scenes that much. Did you find that watching it right before helped you care about it more, or did it still kind of fall flat?
I mean, probably more than you did, yeah. But more in general, a lot of it does kind of fall flat. Like the Jorge character, who I quite like that actor a lot. He was in Breaking Bad, Giancarlo Esposito.
That's right, yeah.
He's a good actor, but his character, like, I don't know. I was never engaged with him.
Right. He's kind of a comic booky character who just like has a little 6-shooter and is cool and drives around. Yeah.
Barry Pepper's character, who played Vince, like, is just like barely in the movie and really random. And like he shows up at the end there and you're supposed to be like, oh, it's him. But I was like, who
was he in was he in the second movie?
He was in the very end of the second one. Yeah.
Okay, because I didn't remember him at all. I was like, who's this guy?
He was the leader of the right hand that they run into at the very end of the second movie.
Okay.
Yeah. And they had the heiress guy, who was the little kid who looked a lot old, like noticeably older in this movie because way more years went by than they wanted to. But yeah, I mean, I think talking about how, especially in a series that this movie is coming out a year later than it was supposed to, leaning on your emotional attachment to those relationships in past movies is especially problematic here because, I mean, I legitimately, if I had not watched the Scorch Trials before I saw this movie, so much of the stuff would have been like, what? And I saw the movie. So like, it's not that I haven't seen the movie. It's just that it's been so long and I've like, it was just kind of like a not very memorable film. So the important emotional pieces of it did not like stay in my brain.
I think they could have redesigned the first scene to remind you of who all the characters were a little bit more. Because like Newt shows up and he like cuts through the wall of the train car, but that's it. Like his role, I think, was maybe sort of well, I mean, I guess Thomas is kind of the moral compass too. So I don't know. What would you say Newt's role was in the earlier movies? Was he just like a loyal sidekick the whole time?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there was the leader of the Glade was I forgot his name, but he died midway through that first movie. What is his name? Albie. Yeah. He was his second in command, and so he's like representative of the pure kind of buddy friendship that I am going to be with you no matter what. I will, like he even says in his letter, I will follow you anywhere.
Right. So maybe it was never that great of a character to begin with because he didn't really go through stuff because like Minho was kind of a rival that you respected and they like survived in the maze together, even though they didn't really like each other. Thomas went back to like help him. So that was like effective character building that you weren't really able to play off of that relationship in this movie because Minho was separated the whole time. But yeah, I guess with Newt, it's like, well, he's just like a dog. He's like the dog character.
And that's a shame too, because I think Thomas Brodie Sangster is a good actor.
He's a good actor. It's just there was never like anything. He was just someone tagging along with Thomas.
Right, and if you're gonna like end the emotional arc of your movie on his death and what his death impacts and does to Thomas, I think you do need to reinforce that relationship a bit more. And I can see where they tried to, because there's a scene when Thomas is gonna sneak out and he's the one that finds him first.
Right.
and he's like, no, I'm going. Like they're trying to reestablish and reconfirm that friendship and camaraderie. But yeah, I think you're right that it does rely too much on
I think
on the movies that came before it.
I think Thomas is too often the most competent one. Like, you want him to be able to rely on his friends more, whereas Thomas is kind of like the moral compass. He's like the action hero. He's like all of the things. So he really doesn't need any of his friends.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of a mistake.
Yeah, yeah.
I think they could have shown them relying on each other more in this movie in particular.
I could see that. Yeah.
But
all right.
anyway.
I think we've talked about the Death Cure enough.
Yeah, I think we have.
Yeah, so that is Maze Runner: The Death Cure. Good series overall. Disappointing conclusion, but
Yeah, but
it was not god awful.
pretty expected. It's hard to figure out a way to end it, really.
Yeah. So it's out playing now. Number 1 movie of the weekend. As we said before, number 2 is Jumanji. But yeah, that's The Death Cure. All right, Michael. Let's talk about what we've been watching.
What have you been watching? What have I been watching? Well, I asked you first, so you better tell me.
You can go first.
I have been watched a Netflix Spanish heist series called La Casa de Papel, the House of Paper, which is great. We've done a whole episode on heist movies.
Yes.
And this is a heist movie that has been drawn into 13 plus episodes in a way that does not really drag on. It's super tense, and it's got great characters. And because all of the characters are like locked in this heist and stressful situations, they have great opportunities to be explored.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I had never heard of that. I know you sent me a message about a week ago that said watched this, but you did not tell me it was a heist movie.
Yes.
Until
Well, I
just recently
assumed you would take my word.
I mean, I literally just said okay and threw it
Yeah.
on my Netflix list without looking.
Yeah.
And
No, you will love it, I'm pretty sure. It is in Spanish. It was made for like a Spanish TV station, I believe, and it's one of those things that Netflix like bought the rights to and then like claimed it was a Netflix original series, and they had nothing to do with it until they bought the rights to it. You have to watch it in Spanish subtitles, or you have to speak Spanish. So if you are not a person who likes to read subtitles, I guess maybe this isn't for you. But yeah, I thought it was awesome.
Great. That is, it has moved to the top of my list. It was on it before. Now it's at the top.
Excellent. Yeah, I almost want to do like a whole podcast discussing that. So
That might be interesting. We'll do
watch
heist part 2.
all right.
The heistening. All right. I've got a couple things for you this week. First of all, I finally saw Paul Thomas Anderson's Phantom Thread last year, which was nominated for Best Picture and Best Director in the Oscars, like we talked about. The movie is about a 1950s London dressmaker played by Daniel Day-Lewis. This is his final acting role, he says. He's retiring after this for sure. He plays this dressmaker that is pretty eccentric and tends to go out, find a woman that he likes, brings her into his world of like expensive extravagance, and then eventually tires of them and kicks them to the curb. But this time he finds Vicky Krieps, who plays a woman named Alma, who, like, the thing you could argue that Alma is the lead of this movie and Daniel Day-Lewis is the supporting. You could argue she's the protagonist. I would be interested to see different people that see this, what they would say about that, but they both basically jockey for the protagonist role. And the thing that I think is so remarkable about this movie is that she keeps up with him. Like, Daniel Day-Lewis is well known as a very talented actor. I think he's very skilled, and she not only holds her own, I think she surpasses him in places. She is incredible in this movie. The character she's playing, this strong but complicated woman who enters this life and is trying to like start her roots in this life and figure out she really honestly loves this man, and it's all very complicated, and it's a very slow moving like methodical, beautiful film, just like you would expect from Paul Thomas Anderson. My wife thought it was boring, so that's her. I thought it was fascinating, and it's the kind of movie that I think like you like it when you see it, and then the more you think about it, the more you like it afterwards. I can't talk about it anything else without going into the plot more, and I don't want to spoil that for people that haven't seen it yet. But I think this is worth checking out.
Yeah, I've heard good things about it.
Yeah. The other thing I want to talk about is The Good Place. This is the NBC, I think, TV show starring. Wow, I just blanked on her name. Kristen Bell. There it is. Kristen Bell and Ted Danson is in it as well. About a group of 4 people that die and go to heaven, or the good place as it's called. It's on the 2nd season now. It's a kind of like a sitcom, kind of, but it's a single camera, so it's not like laugh track level sitcom. It has its season 2 finale this Thursday, so I wanted to bring it up. This is one of the funniest shows on television right now. It's so inventive that like the show has changed so much from the first episode of the first season, and the turns and the twists and the way the show changes are always fascinating. They always think that they've written themselves into a corner, like, where do we go with this now? And then they come up with just a great idea, and it just floors you. It's very witty and clever. The humor is great. The characters are great. I love The Good Place so much. If you haven't seen it yet, check it out. I think the first season is entirely on Netflix, and the second season's on Hulu as it comes out. That's what I watch it on. But
cool. I'll have to check it out. There's not a lot of good comedy shows.
Yeah, I agree. This is one of them. Absolutely. Check out The Good Place. Season finale on Thursday. I'm both excited and a little bummed because I like watching the show. It's going to be gone for a year.
Bummer.
All right, but that is it for what we've been watching, and that's all we have for the podcast this week. So, Michael, thanks for coming. It was fun. I liked talking this movie with you.
Indeed. It's sometimes more interesting to talk about movies that aren't that good. Yeah,
I agree. We read a book for the book club this month that was more interesting to talk about than the book was to read. So it happens sometimes. But if you have any questions or comments or just want to weigh in on The Maze Runner and The Death Cure, you could reach out to us via email at dailyplanetfilms@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter at dailyplanetfilms. That's DALY.
And if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, please do so to ensure you never miss an episode. And you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else.
Yeah, that's right, Michael. We also have lots of great content coming to you guys this week and every week. We had another edition of our book club. Like I said, we talked about the book Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. That book is going to be made into a movie that comes out in February. So we did the book club last month, and we'll be talking about the movie next month when it comes out. I'm very interested to see what that ends up being.
Me too.
We also, this week, have new episodes of We've Got Ward and Vow to View, the ridiculous podcast I do with my wife. They will be coming this week and more. All of these shows, all of them can be found at dailyplanetfilms.com. And if you like this show, or any of our shows, and want to support us, you can become a patron of the Daily Planet. You can pledge $1 a month or whatever else you can afford to help ensure we keep growing and keep making new stuff. There's also tons of patron-exclusive content and rewards, so go ahead and check us out. It's patreon.com/dailyplanetfilms.
And please consider rating and reviewing us on iTunes. Every review helps us to get more exposure and introduces new people to the content we make here. Yep. And that's it. That's all we have for you guys this week. Next week, Matt and I will be back here, and we're doing a new thing, Michael. I don't know if you heard about this, but we our $20 donor level, the Kryptonian level donor, we added a new feature for them. Those people at that level get to pick a topic for us and basically become producers on a show. They pick a topic and tell us to talk about it, and that's what we're doing next week. Oh,
so every once in a while.
What's the show about? Can you say? Is it a surprise?
I don't know yet, because the first person we reached out to had want us to watch a TV show, which is going to take a little longer to prep for, because we have to watch a full season of television. So I've reached out to the next person in line. So we're still not sure what the topic is going to be, but yeah, I think this is a great way to honor those that donate to us at that level, and also to maybe explore and discuss some things we never would have picked ourselves. So cool. I'm pretty excited about this. It's going to be interesting no matter what, but we'll be back next week.
Podcast is over. It's done. We hope you all had some fun. Go back to your work or your school. Maybe the gym. Hey, that's cool. Regardless, just go away. But please come back next